That our next panel is about BC mining, securing BC's economic future. So perhaps there are some solutions to be found to this very disappointing and negative view that we have of the overall BC economy and its direction over the last couple of years. We'll be joined at the podium by Tim McEwan, who is the Senior Vice President Corporate Affairs at the Mining Association of British Columbia, MABC. And Tim is someone who I consider among my favorite policy wonks in the province. He really knows it all. And prior to his current role with MABC, he was the Senior Vice President Policy and Stakeholder Engagement with ICBA, the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association. Earlier in his career, he served as Director of Programs and Policy with the Business Council of BC and also had a key leadership role in the landmark Multi-Association BC Business Summit Initiative. He served as a member of the Deputy Ministers Council of British Columbia and the Board of Governors of the Business Council of BC, along with many other government and nonprofit organizations. He has a BA and an MPA from the University of Victoria and lives in Tawasin with his wife, Cynthia. Please welcome Tim to the stage. And after his presentation, he'll be introducing Martin Turenne from FPX Nickel, who will join him for a conversation.
Well, thanks very much for the kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here today. And I really want to commend ResourceWorks for their for putting this session together. Stuart and his team have done a great job over a number of years of giving the hot takes on BC's economy and also a very strong effort to prosecute the case for responsible resource development in British Columbia. So with that, I note the mining industry has long roots in the province. It's probably the earliest industry in the province. On the screen, you'll see a picture of my hometown, Trail, British Columbia, where Caminco gave me my summer employment way back. It's an operation that's been in place for 130 years, so that's resilience. And I think that's what we need to think about through this day, how we build resilience, how we secure BC's future, and as Stuart has kind of labeled this conference, how we get it done. So today I'm pleased to begin our conversation, and I'll invite Martin Turenne to the stage a bit later to have a conversation about his very exciting project, FPX Nickel. But before that, I'll just give an overview of some economic analysis that we've done at MABC that shows the breadth and depth of the opportunity that we do have in our province. So with that, I'll move to the next slide. So British Columbia, in the current mining industry is 35,000 jobs. It also supports 4,000 small, medium, and First Nations businesses in all regions of the province. The annual spend within those 4,000 small, medium, and First Nation businesses is about $3.7 billion. There's $18 billion in economic activity from the industry, and that represents about 30% of the goods exports from British Columbia. The province is a key global mining jurisdiction and home to one of the largest concentrations of mining and exploration companies and industry expertise globally. Our mines refine we mine or refine 16 of the 34 critical minerals on Canada's critical mineral list. That includes, among others, aluminum, germanium, and zinc. BC is the leading producer of copper in Canada and steelmaking coal as well, along with the second largest producer of silver and the only producer of molybdenum. As I mentioned, we've got an economic impact study, and I'll walk through some of the results, but this map up on the screen shows the regional dispersion of 27 projects that are possible over the next number of years. The projects are found in all corners of the province and are at various stages of regulatory review. As we look at the 27 projects, 18 are critical mineral mines, 6 are precious metal mines, and 3 are steel-making coal mines. So in this time of global economic uncertainty and volatility, successful development of these projects can deliver urgent and essential and lasting benefits, jobs for workers, stability for communities, economic security and resilience for the whole province, and a vital contribution in these challenging times to national and allied demand for critical minerals and steelmaking coal. Of the 27 projects that are being assessed, 21 are new mines and 6 are mine extensions, and all are considered, as I say, advanced development projects. Some are in the feasibility and design stage, others are midway through regulatory process, and some are nearing a final permitting decision. So if you're interested in the report, you can scan, I think it's on the screen, it's hard to see from here, the QR code that's there. It's a very data-heavy report that was done by Ed Mansfield, who is a long-term economist, resource economist in this space. So I'd commend it to you. So during the construction of the 27 mines that are possible, and they exclude now Highland Valley Copper, which that mine life extension was announced a couple weeks ago. It's a $2.4 billion expansion that will stabilize the Logan Lake and Kamloops area. But the 27 projects as a total would be $41 billion worth of capital investment, economic output of $90 billion, and tax revenues of some $12 billion. Over ongoing operations, and this is a big number, 27 mines would produce $984 billion in economic output. So what I want to leave you with, it's a truly staggering opportunity that we have in British Columbia in the mining industry. The GDP would be $506 billion, and tax revenues of $222 billion. The annual supply chain spend, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, of BC's current operating mines and 2 smelters is about $3.7 billion. And again, that's 4,000 BC businesses located in 200 municipalities, towns, and First Nations communities around the province. The economic impact economic impact analysis estimates that the 27 new mining projects would produce $20 billion in demand for goods and services during the construction and development phase. So on the screen here, you'll see some breakouts, and we've got our Director of Communications, Jane Zernacki, here. She's done a terrific job on our social media platform and getting the message out about what the regional breakouts of some of the opportunities are, and you'll see some of them in the Northwest, Central, and Northeast BC on the screen. The broader impacts are even much greater than those supply and service impacts that I pegged at $20 billion. If you look at the southern interior, the goods and services that would be purchased from 27 new mines would be $7 billion. And if you look at the current spending within First Nations, by First Nations, procurement that's procured from First Nations affiliated companies, it's $520 million. And that represents about 14% of the total $3.7 billion that is spent annually in BC. 27 new mines could provide $1.4 billion worth of procurement to First Nations, extrapolating from that number. The benefits from the 27 new mines would accrue to the southwest corner of British Columbia. Again, we're in Vancouver. We're a global hub for mining. The 27 new mines would generate $9 billion of goods and services demand through development and construction. So in terms of where we're at in British Columbia, like much of the world, we're facing unprecedented economic uncertainty and volatility, as we know. The whipsawing effect of U.S. tariffs on Canada's auto sector and steel, aluminum, and softwood lumber exports pose an extraordinary threat to our economy. The global trading system that has underpinned our international commerce since World War II is in disarray. Trade wars, as we know, are a new reality. The provincial economy, as Hyro showed, is slowing, and businesses are dealing with rising costs. We face a provincial deficit north of $11 billion, and so it's become structural, and we'll see that over the next few years. These developments threaten the essentials BC's economy, of BC's economy. It threatens well-paying jobs for our citizenry. It threatens the stability of our communities, and it threatens the ability of us to pay for vital public services like healthcare, education, and housing. By developing BC's critical minerals, precious metals, and steelmaking coal resources, our mining sector can provide billions of dollars in economic development, as I've shown. It's time to get it done. 3 key actions are needed to advance BC's staggering mining and refining opportunities. We need to accelerate permitting. Immediate action is needed to grow BC's economy by accelerating permitting and approval of mines. Reducing permit timelines dramatically to a few years while maintaining world-class environmental protection can be a competitive advantage in British Columbia. Second, we need to support First Nations capacity. Providing funding to ensure First Nations have the governance, administrative, and technical capacity they need to participate on an equitable footing in reviews of major mining projects is imperative. This will foster strong partnerships, advance economic reconciliation, and enable more timely permitting. Expanding BC's electrical grid and improving road, rail access to support the development of new mines and critical mineral projects throughout the province is foundational. And this is the third thing, infrastructure. These investments are essential for decarbonization, timely mine development, reducing supply chain friction, and ensuring long-term economic stability and community sustainability. So I'd like to leave you with the message that today's mining and refining industry, far from being a sunset industry, is a sunrise industry partnered with First Nations. The result can be long-term prosperity and resiliency in our communities throughout the province. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to briefly outline BC's mining opportunity. And with that, I'd now like to invite Martin Turenne to the stage to talk about his exciting project, FPX Nickel. Well, welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Tim.
So I've described the magnitude of the opportunity that we have in British Columbia's mining industry, and it is, I think the word that I've used repeatedly, it's staggering. And 27 new mines, $984 billion of potential economic output. It's an enormous opportunity that I think it's going to require effort from government, business, civil society, local governments to really realize the opportunity. And Martin has been somebody that we've worked with over the past couple of years on his project, FPX Nickel. Martin's the president and CEO of FPX Nickel. The project that they have is a world-class nickel project in northern British Columbia, north central British Columbia. When you think of the pantheon of nickel cities in Canada, you think of Sudbury, you think of Thompson, and you think of now, hopefully, Fort St. James and Prince George when we move forward. So with that, there are few people better in the early to mid advanced development stage of a project to talk to about this than Martin. So let's begin. So welcome, Martin. So FPX is an exciting project. Let's begin by just providing, Martin, if we could, an overview of where it's located and where you're currently in the development process.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone, for coming out, and thanks to Stuart for the invitation to this important discussion. So FPX is based in Vancouver. We also have a regional office in the town of Fort St. James. and we're focused on the development of a project we call the Baptiste Nickel Project, which is located about 90 kilometers northwest of Fort St. James. Baptiste sits within the traditional territories of the Claston, Binche, Takla, and Yukuche First Nations, and the associated infrastructure, being the road and the power line connecting to the project, would also impact on the territories of 4 additional nations. This is an advanced project. We've completed a pre-feasibility study. We're now in the initial stages of a feasibility study and look to enter the environmental assessment process with a submission of our initial project description later this year. Subject to positive EA certificate and permitting outcomes, the project would be ready for a construction decision in the latter part of this decade, depending again on the length of the permitting process. We have several large corporate backers. Sumitomo Metal Mining is one of our largest shareholders. They're Japan's largest mining company and a long history of association with mining in BC, including in a significant ownership position in Teck, as well as Outokumpu. Outokumpu is a European company. It's the largest stainless steel company in Europe. And I would say that both the Europeans and the Japanese interest in this project is predicated on, you know, the size and I think the economic potential of the project, but just as importantly on the ability to produce nickel in a responsible fashion. About 75% of the world's nickel supply is controlled by China and Russia, and oftentimes the standards of extraction and processing of nickel coming from those jurisdictions does not meet our own. And you know, our project, among others in BC and across Canada, I think represent a good opportunity to deliver, you know, responsibly sourced mine products to end markets.
Thanks, Martin. One of the things when we look at projects such as yours and the challenges in the north throughout the province is the opportunity for projects such as yours to help with communities that are facing real challenges because of the decline of forestry. Can you talk about some of the things that you've worked on to help bridge that gap as you've had conversations with senior government officials and so forth?
Yeah, so similar to the work that you've done, Tim, with MABC to understand the economic impact of the various projects and mine opportunities across the province, we've done the same specifically in regards to our project. So you know, we're in the vicinity of towns like Fort St. James and Vanderhoof, who have obviously seen and will continue, unfortunately, to experience the impacts of sort of decline in forestry and processing activities in that industry. And we see that, you know, there's population decline that is potentially, you know, associated with that economic decline in these areas. In regards to our Baptiste project, the opportunity here is significant. As Tim mentioned, this is one of the world's largest nickel deposits, and could the project that we're looking to develop here could be one of the 10 largest nickel operations in the world. To put this in context in economic terms, over a 30-year mine life, the project would have GDP associated with it of close to $50 billion. Tax revenues at provincial, federal, and municipal levels would be about $15 billion over that time, including close to $1 billion just to municipal coffers. The job creation would be almost staggering vis-a-vis the kind of the population in the general region here. 1,100 full-time jobs over that 30-year mine life. And you know, drawing on MABC data, we understand that the average salary for mine employees in BC is close to $140,000 per annum. So these are strong, well-paying jobs. Within that, more deeply, one of the things we're very focused on as a company is ensuring that First Nations communities in particular can maximize their participation in every aspect of the project, including obviously in the economic participation. That can include opportunities around direct equity ownership in the project itself, which maybe we can speak about in a few minutes. And you know, also ensuring that people can think about this not just as sort of seasonal jobs, but as long-term careers. serving a project that would operate over multiple decades. We just recently wrapped up another season of drilling at the project this year, and very proud to report that over 75% of the contract awards were to First Nations-owned businesses in the region, and that's a commitment that we have as a company, and I know that commitment is broadly shared by other mining companies operating in the province as well.
Thanks for that, Martin. So you're a small to mid-cap mining company. You're moving through regulatory process, and one of the things the government did last year was establish a critical minerals office to help facilitate permitting and authorizations in a faster way. It's something from previous work I did in government that I'm familiar with. But what I'd like to know is, and your company, as I understand it, has been a pilot within that process. Just thought I'd ask you, how's that going? What are some of the lessons you've had from that experience, and what could be done better if there is anything to be done better?
Yeah, I would, you know, I think it's part of just a very clear trend in both the provincial and federal level politically of increasing recognition of the importance of the mining industry. Having been involved with this company over the last 13 years, I can see that, you know, the political winds have shifted some time ago from being, let's say, mere toleration of the mining industry to then kind of being somewhat neutral about it, to now being very much full-throated in its support. You know, one of the initiatives of the provincial government, which I would applaud, is the formation of a standalone mining ministry for the first time, I believe, in 60 or 70 years, with the election of the current administration here provincially. And, you know, the new mines minister, I think, has taken on a role very much as a full-throated cheerleader of the industry. I was at an investment conference in the United States last 2 weeks ago, and the minister attended. The minister was there to play a role, to talk to investors, global investors, larger mining companies, that BC is open for business for mining. And that's an important, very important tone to set at the political level. And I think we're starting to see some of that at the federal level as well. In terms of the Critical Minerals Office that you mentioned, this is an initiative entirely directed at companies in the pre-regulatory phase. I mentioned earlier that we will enter the EA process later this year. We've been working with this Critical Minerals Office now over the last 12, 14 months. And what that office is designed to do is to increase the readiness of all of the key players that have a role to play in permitting a project like this. So one, to increase the readiness of the proponent, to ensure that we as a company are ready, we understand all of the requirements from a data standpoint and what our submissions need to look like. Number two, ensuring that government and its very many agencies are prepared for the project. Government is not a single monolith. Many ministries provincially can sometimes operate in silos. And so activating the Critical Minerals Office ensures that those silos are kind of being broken down, and that agencies, ministries across government are collaborating in regards to our projects so that they are ready when our submission is made. And finally, and in my view, most importantly, ensuring that First Nations capacity can be appropriately built up, as they obviously have a crucial role to play in EA oversight and in the permitting process. We as a company, we're pleased to provide capacity funding, but there's also a fundamental G2G, or government-to-government role, to be played by government to engage directly with nations on projects of interest like ours. And on all fronts, we've seen, I think, great success through this initiative, so that when the province and even now the federal government talks about wanting to achieve, you know, regulatory efficiency in mining, it really is about that pre-regulatory phase, making sure that everyone is ready so that when we press the button to submit our project description, that all of those key players are fully prepared for that process to begin.
That's great, Martin. As well, the federal government has shown support to your project in other ways, and NRCan recently gave you CMIF funding for some of the early feasibility studies that you need to do. How important is that for, you know, companies of your size and at the stage of development in order for you to get to where you need to get to?
Yeah, so last week we did announce that through Natural Resources Canada, we were the recipients around $3.5 million from through an initiative called the Critical Minerals Infrastructure Fund. This fund is really designed to help companies or proponents to work to unlock key pieces of infrastructure, be they road, rail, power lines, that can unlock the economic potential of their project, but can also unlock other opportunities in the regions in which those projects are located. For example, for our project, one of the key aspects of it that we see as a very positive benefit to communities would be the ability to leverage off the power line we would construct to our project to then provide power to certain underserved First Nations communities that have unstable power that are sometimes subject to blackouts or brownouts as a result of that instability of power. You know, the federal government has a deeper, bigger balance sheet, we know, than the provincial government. These are in the grand context, I think, not large dollar amounts, but they help to signal again that Canada is open for business for mining, and that government can help to provide that small degree of sort of catalytic capital to demonstrate to international investors, to large global mining companies, that they won't face impediments to advancing projects, that in fact government will help to inch them forward in those small but meaningful ways.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Martin. Moving to sort of an open-ended question and conversation. We're on the fringes of UBCM today, and what are some of the things you think that local communities need to think about for a project like yours? The things around engagement, support, the procurement opportunities, you know, fairly open-ended just in terms of how we can realize the generational opportunity that we really have here. You know, your project, as you say, is the economic impact would be $50 billion with a B. I've sketched out $984 billion as the total potential opportunity, long-term economic impact. But none of that happens without First Nations as partners and communities as willing participants and enablers, frankly, in your activities locally and with senior government. Comments?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think I alluded earlier to the fact that there's been this shift in political winds over time from sort of tolerating the mining industry to now actually working to advocate for it from a government standpoint. You touch on the economic factors there, which are obviously important and I think help to drive that. But more broadly, I do feel quite passionately about the role that the mining industry plays across multiple aspects of society, not just the economic aspect. And I don't think that there's a single industry in this province or in this country that can achieve important objectives relating to First Nations reconciliation, economic development, transition to the low-carbon economy, and tightening our ties with our geopolitical allies. I might just touch briefly on those. So First Nations reconciliation, real reconciliation that goes beyond just token sort of gestures in that direction, but actually ensures that First Nations are intimately, closely involved in regulatory processes, that they're properly and adequately funded to do so, that they have opportunities to maximize their business interests and employment interests in projects, and beyond that, as mentioned earlier, to becoming part owners in projects like ours. That's the path forward that I see, and I think the mining industry is playing a leading role in this province in advancing reconciliation in that regard. Economically, I don't think we need to dwell on that too much. The numbers there are inarguable. Transitioning to low carbon, a greener economy where we're working to mitigate climate change, transition to electric vehicles, to battery storage that enables clean energy grids. This is fundamental. These materials are fundamental to doing that. We cannot achieve those climate goals in the absence of mining. And to the extent that we don't support the development of mines here in Canada that enable that transition, then we're reliant on actors who may not share our values, who may turn off the tap in terms of supply chain, and we've seen that in rare earths recently, and who just don't operate to the same standards environmentally, socially, and otherwise that we do for mining in Canada. So I would invite the most kind of stringent environmental activists or people who are environmentally minded to really think about deeply supporting Canadian mining as being entirely consistent with your broader objectives. And finally, tightening those trade relationships and geopolitical relationships with countries. I mentioned earlier, we have significant investment and offtake arrangements in place with some of the largest players in Japan and Europe. They very much want to work with Canadian companies that operate responsibly, that has activated capital that has allowed our project to advance. And there continue to be major opportunities, as we all know, in the dire need that we face today to diversify our exports to other allied countries in Europe and in Asia. And I think our project, and as well as many other projects in this province, really, as I say, sit at the center of those 4 objectives. And again, I would defy anyone to name another industry in our province that can credibly achieve important objectives in those 4 areas.
Yeah, thanks for that, Martin. Great comments. I thought I might just shift, if we may, we've got some more time here, to the whole question of infrastructure. And you know, in northern British Columbia, it's always, having lived there myself, there's you're always playing catch up, it seems. We have this enormous opportunity in mining. There's opportunities. I see my friend and colleague in the Business Association world, Jeff Morrison, here in LNG, and I know there's going to be more on that. But what are the things, as you look at your project in the context of the North and, you know, getting your product, once you have a mine operating, your product to market, you know, like electricity demand, you know, port load-out facilities, where are we at, do you think, in terms of the reasonable prospects that are ahead of us in mining and your project within that context?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think, you know, for our project, we're actually very well located. We don't need government to make significant investments to unlock important pieces of infrastructure. You know, the network of things like Forest Service roads are hugely advantageous for mineral exploration and project development in this province that companies like ours very much leverage off of and are grateful for to our colleagues in the forestry industry. One of the key projects, of course, under consideration right now is the North Coast Transmission Line, of which we would be users in the future. You know, we know that there's discussions underway between the province and the federal government around potential kind of funding partnerships around that. And we also know that that would unlock not just our project, but a significant number of important copper and precious metals projects in the what's called the Golden Triangle, as you know, Tim, in the northwest of the province. You know, I'm always a little bit hesitant to say that the industry should be going hat in hand to government, but NCTL in particular strikes me as a project that just kind of has to happen and hopefully as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes. Would you be willing to take a couple questions from the floor? Yeah. Okay. Open it up if we can. Anybody have a question? Back there.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question regarding energy, because one of the, in the report there, it states that, in the mining report there, it says that one of the things that's critical is in order to have, you need support for electricity, electrical infrastructure. But you also say that you need power. You spoke about providing power to First Nations and getting them, you know, steady, reliable power. My question is, do you have sufficient power to actually put this mine forward, or are we looking at a gap here in the province in order to see your project go forward?
Yeah, we are in the what's called the queue for BC Hydro. There is sufficient power, but NCTL would help to ensure that both our project and other projects behind us in the queue have that sufficiency of power. It's hard for me to speak beyond that, but NCTL is critical in unlocking not just our project, but others in the general area.
Any further questions? Oh, sir, in front.
Thank you. Stephen Karpuk, City of Kamloops, TNRD. Grateful to be here and that this session's ongoing. Also grateful that we have the announcement of locally Highland Valley getting the extension. Great partnership with our First Nations up there. I think we are looking forward to Seco Mines in the North Thompson up by the Vavenby, Clearwater area. Also grateful to see up on your slide deck that Kamloops is the #1 mining supplier in the province of BC and hopefully growing as the future go forward. One of the questions comes back to the previous gentleman and his economic thing, and I think this is one of the challenges with economics and the narrative and stats. The biggest lie of all, as I was told by my stats prof. We need to invest. We need governments to build infrastructure to support our growth, but that comes at a cost of debt. But we need to understand that's a good social debt. So is a school and lots of other things. So a question to yourselves, how do we change that narrative? Because people think that when governments are going into debt, that's a bad thing, but there's different kinds of ways to go into debt, good debt and bad debt. And I think good social debt is investments in our infrastructure that allows us economic opportunity. So I'm curious what your thoughts are into how we differentiate that narrative.
Well, let me begin with that. Martin's mentioned one project that's absolutely critical to unleashing mine development in the Northwest and along the Highway 16 corridor, and that's the North Coast Transmission Line. So, that's an example, frankly, of good debt because of what's on the end of the pipeline there, which is, a number of mines in the Northwest and a world-class nickel deposit. So, it's differentiating between what is needed and nice to have, in our time. So, but that one is absolutely key for us in our industry. Do you want to add it? Another question, someone, sir?
Yeah, thanks. City of Kamloops River. Super excited about your project and all the fact that BC government's now pro-mining. But your project and all these other projects started off with a junior mining company in exploration. And all the junior mining companies that we work with in exploration, they're all struggling in BC, permit-wise. A lot of them are based in Vancouver and actually working outside of BC. So I was wondering if you had advice for the provincial government on how to help these junior exploration companies keep going and keep exploring and poking around the province.
So we are very much a junior mining company. This is a discovery that our team made about 15 years ago. I think people may or may not be aware, but the average timeline from a discovery of a mineral deposit in Canada to that deposit actually becoming an operating mine is around 45 years. Not all of that is the regulatory piece, by the way. A lot of it is the cycles of commodity prices, and it's I think the average is that mineral deposit, that 45-year mineral deposit becoming a mine, typically cycles through 7 different owners as there are booms and busts through the cycle. Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot from my compatriots in the junior mining industry about the difficulty of advancing or financing. I'm not sure exactly the struggles that you hear there. We are in the mining industry, as miners, we're price takers, right? And what we've seen, I think, over the course of the last 15 to 20 years is China in particular has identified this as a strategic industry. They want to be able to control these supply chains to then become dominant in the downstream industries. So you can't be dominant, let's say, in electric vehicle production, which China now is, in the absence of those supply chains. And so they've made, these coordinated strategic decisions, a meld of sort of politics and economics to control these supply chains over time. That has tended to, depress the marginal cost of production, again, because they're not following the same standards that we do. So then how does government respond then in that case? And you're starting to see a little bit of it in the United States under President Trump. They recently announced an arrangement with a rare earths company, producer of rare earths in the United States, called MP Materials, that involved investment by the government in the company itself, a long-term offtake agreement, and the government providing guarantee around floor pricing. Basically, that locks in a reasonable rate of return for the mining company, who then produces these critical elements, these rare earths, which are absolutely required for things like AI data centers and chip making. So that's, in a way, that's almost Western governments playing a little bit by the Chinese playbook. There's certain pros and cons to that. Any kind of free market person is going to take pause at that. But in my view, trade around mined products, free trade, quote unquote, globally, to the extent that we're not all working at the same standards, creates an inherent structural imbalance that makes it harder for Canadian companies operating responsibly to compete. I think it is up to government to work with industry to understand those challenges, and to maybe put in similar programs that could at least provide some degree of floor pricing that would incentivize the next generation of projects being developed here at home. Sorry, your question is very broad. I could go on for quite some time, but I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Martin. Any further questions?
Thank you, Joan Atkinson, Mayor Mackenzie. This question is for Martin. You made reference to the network of forest service roads in the province that help you access all these very important sites. Right now, many of the FSRs in the province are being shut down because of less harvesting activity. And so my question to you is, can you see the mining sector that some of these roads no longer will be FSRs, but MSRs? Our communities rely on those for access to the backcountry, also for egress routes in case of forest fire, if you're a small community surrounded by forests. So I'm just wondering if there's been any thought in you assuming that responsibility.
Yeah, it's a great question. Of course, the forestry companies obviously have done tremendous work to build out these networks of roads and to maintain them over time, to support their activities, which have generated significant revenue for their industry and for communities and workers. The fundamental challenge with converting those to be mining supply roads is there's not the same density of need of access for mining companies. And many mining companies, such as our own, we are junior companies. We do not generate revenue currently. We're working towards developing a mine that would. And so we wouldn't necessarily have the financial capacity to do that. These are conversations, though, that we have, and we know that are very important, not just to non-Indigenous, but also to Indigenous communities around access. Some people want the access. Some people don't because of concerns around hunting and the like. I take your point, but I do think there are some structural challenges from the mining industry to, on a widespread basis, to kind of adopt management of those roads. I do think it is a challenge that's not quite so easy as a cutover just to the mining companies taking it on.
Okay, well, with that, thanks very much, Martin, for joining me. It's always great to hear from you, and I think we're at time.
Please stay in your seats, Tim and Martin. And thank you very much. Let's give them a little bit of applause here.